What's your favorite zombie movie? My favorite zombie movie? I don't know. Probably Day of the Dead? But everyone hates that one. Nah, everyone doesn't hate it. They at least don't like it. Not as much as the other Romero movies. Well, that's fine. But I do. But why? Well, I'll tell you. If you've come across zombie movies, then you probably know the name George Romero. And if you know the name George Romero, then you probably know his subgenre-defining Dead trilogy, and maybe some of his other zombie movies that aren't held in as high regard. Because reasons. Night of the Living Dead, Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead are all required viewing, and personally, I think that despite these films having little to no connective tissue, narratively speaking, they play best being viewed in reasonably quick succession, like within the same week, because when viewed that way, they do hint at an overall story, or progression. It's always bugged me that Day of the Dead is considered the black sheep of the bunch, and though I love all three films, I think Day of the Dead is my favorite. I mean, the way the movie starts off. We get this, what I think is a hat nod to Roman Polanski's Repulsion, and then our protagonists are searching for people in what is now an empty and hollowed out world. And it answers that question from Dawn of the Dead.
You never know.
I think we know now. Also, this is easily my favorite title screen of the trilogy. Oh my god, Tom Savini really came to work on this one. It's just incredible. George A. Romero turned down a large portion of the movie's proposed budget in order to be able to keep the movie from being watered down to an R rating, and thank the horror gods he did, because the blood and gore in Day of the Dead is the series' best by a mile. And we even get the return of the blue-gray zombies, which are my personal favorite look for zombies. You'll see them on display at the end, where a noticeable amount of zombies are given extra character by the way they're dressed. One is a clown, a football player, a bride, etc. And I guess we've seen zombies wearing clothing that implied what they did in life in Dawn of the Dead, but we really see a lot more of it in Day. It adds some flavor to them, and whether or not it was intentional, the costumes make the ending a final and fatal parade of jobs and activities that are no longer available, or even possible in a world that's now been taken over by the dead. This movie also gives us Bub the Zombie. People seem to either love him or hate him, and I've always been on the side of loving him. I think Sherman Howard's performance is actually extremely impressive and genuinely endearing. During the cathartically violent ending, in which the bunker is overrun, the blood and entrails look outstanding, which is largely because actual pig intestines were used. I don't know that I've ever seen another zombie movie do beautifully nauseating blood quite like this one. The original larger budget was going to see that Day of the Dead would be a much grander in scale movie, but since George stuck to his guns and turned it down, the movie goes back to the cramped feeling that Night of the Living Dead had. While the bunker feels significantly larger than the Night of the Living Dead house, you still feel the claustrophobia and constant unease of being trapped underground with explosive and hateful people who you really don't want to be anywhere near, much less stuck underground with. Day of the Dead takes place in Florida, and fittingly we get this great beachy yet foreboding 80s sounding synth score, which tells us that we're in a paradise that's been curdled and decayed. When you hear it, you can almost see the ocean waves and the Floridian sunset. It reminds us where we are, which I think is necessary because a large majority of the movie takes place underground, where we see the mental toll the end of the world has taken on the characters, with one being just over the edge and others not too far behind. Apparently, the score has been a point of contention among audience members, but I've always found it to be extremely fitting music that served the movie considerably well. The climax to this movie is cathartic, to say the least. An unfeeling and purely instinct-driven mob of zombies washes through the bunker and purges the soldiers, who are basically the hateful remains of humanity. It's a cleansing, and it really does feel like an act of God, or nature resetting itself. Aside from the protagonists, you really do see other human characters in Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead. But in Day of the Dead, not so much. The characters in this movie may very well truly be some of the last people alive. Humanity is so scarce, both literally and figuratively in this movie, that even if other humans do exist out there in this world, it really doesn't feel like our characters will ever come across them, so it doesn't really even matter. That feeling of loneliness and isolation runs through the whole movie. Even the way it ends. 3 people on a beach. It's kind of a paradise setting, but they basically have nothing to do but wait to die. No pies in zombies' faces this time around. Day of the Dead is the most bitter and pessimistic movie in this trilogy. It's also the entry that feels truly bleak and sickeningly hateful. I understand why this wasn't a crowd pleaser like the previous two films were, but as far as tone goes, I probably appreciate this one the most, and when all three movies are watched together, it works as a solid ending, and despite George having made more zombie movies, I think Day of the Dead really does feel like it has a period at the end of it. Thank you so much for watching. Thumbs up if you liked the video, thumbs down if you didn't. I would genuinely love to know what your favorite Romero zombie movie is in the comments. Subscribe for more horror movie content, and until next time.